Hello and welcome to this episode of the Buried Rat Podcast. Today I'm going to be talking about gardening, and by gardening I do mean like actually putting seeds in the ground, so if that's not what you came here for, sorry to disappoint, but yeah, I'm going to be talking about gardening. I took a gardening class at the University of Alabama. It is new 226, I believe, and yeah, so now I have some actual gardening knowledge under my belt, and I want to share a little bit. So, what is gardening? Britannica defines it as the laying out and care of a plot of ground devoted partially or wholly to the growing of plants such as flowers, herbs, or vegetables. Which, I mean, that hits everything, basically. Just care for your land, care for your plants. Pretty simple. But what isn't simple is how interdisciplinary it is. There are a lot of disciplines that cross throughout gardening. You have the arts, you have biology, ecology, chemistry, business, the soil sciences, which I didn't even know was a thing, and health sciences, and even politics in some cases too. Yeah, I'll get a little bit into some of those. So, like the arts, that would be creatively arranging your plants, especially flowers. Some schools will have like a school mascot or the school colors laid out in flowers or in other plants. The biology and ecology, you learn about plant life cycles, you learn about how plants interact with the rest of the world, so other animals, microorganisms, etc. There's the chemistry aspect of what is actually, chemically making up the plant, what it needs to grow, what nutrients it needs. There's the health sciences, like I was saying, so the actual nutrition you can gain by eating your vegetables or fruit, depending on what you're growing, as well as the political aspect of there are a lot of laws on plants, what you can and can't plant, where you can plant it sometimes, especially, I mean, it really only matters if you're going to sell it, but there are quite a few laws and policies that go into effect. But yeah, why would someone want to garden? So I think the biggest reason is just like personal reasons. Some people do it for leisure. Some people do it for like actual necessity. Like they have to grow their own food or else they can't eat. There's experimentation, which is kind of where I was at. I tried something new by growing plants in a container, which I don't think I've ever seen someone grow plants out of a Tupperware container. What else? And then there's also beautification. A lot of people have home gardens just because it looks beautiful. There's also commercial reasons. A lot of restaurants now are starting to grow things inside of the restaurant. So like mint, basil, a lot of, little herbs. But even sometimes like whole tomatoes. They'll grow inside or in a separate greenhouse, and they'll use those fresh vegetables to sell. Which is great because it keeps things extremely local. If you're growing things in-house, you don't have to have them shipped in and imported from anywhere else. So it keeps things very local, and it's very cost efficient. There's a lot of municipal reasons to have gardens. Certain cities or towns or boroughs or whatever you have where you live will decide to make a garden. And one that I kind of want to highlight here, I don't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but it's in Pittsburgh, and they made a garden that is literally just to suck up the like excess rainwater. But when you don't really think about how much rainwater goes straight into the rivers or how much rainwater just it runs off, having something like that to have plants soak it up means that your rivers are less polluted, there's less runoff. Plants can hold a lot of like soil still. So on the side of like cliffs and stuff, a lot of places will put plants just for, stability's sake, which I think is really interesting. There's also the ecological reasons behind it. So having plants in certain places can... to continue the municipal part, public green space is just a reason to have it, just to have a park, a beautiful park, as well as kind of creating an ecological area of less heat. Concrete literally just reflects heat back up. same with cars. I mean, it's a big metal box. It heats things up. If you have a lot of natural green things, they can cool off an area pretty well, which is interesting. There's also the ecological reasons of some people want to have a space for like bees and butterflies and other like pollinators, things like that, just to have a natural space or a natural kind of safe haven within a built urban human environment. Next is how. How do you garden? So there are 3 types of gardening or farming that I kind of want to talk about, which is certified organic, organic practices, and inorganic practices. So certified organic is the most strict. That means you can have no prohibited substances on your land for at least 3 years. Again, this is for certified organic, so don't let that all scare you. You do not have to follow this whatsoever. You have to use natural fertilizers, which could be, animal manure or compost. And a certified organic farm would practice crop rotation, which means using a different crop in the same place every year or every season, because plants like certain nutrients, and if you plant the same thing in the same place every year, it's going to suck the dirt dry of whatever that nutrient is. Next is natural pest controls. So instead of using pesticides or insecticides, a lot of the time they will use mechanical means, which literally just means like picking up bugs and flicking them somewhere else. Approved pest repellents, like botanical oils or plant extracts. There are certain just natural extracts from plants that will have an effect that wards away certain animals. There are biological controls. Farm that we used for my class, we actually had just a cat that lived on the farm. And I was able to scare away like small mammals and little rodents, which was really great for the farm because that means nothing's going to be nibbling on the collard greens. But it also means that you don't have to spray the plant with insecticide. Or pesticide. You just have an animal fulfill its natural role in the world as a predator and, attack and scare things off. Certified organic farms also usually do not like genetically modified organisms or GMOs, which includes seeds and compost. So if you have compost that had a GMO banana in it, let's say, you wouldn't be able to be certified organic anymore because that compost is coming from a non-organic place. So yeah, certified organic is very, very, very strict. Next is organic practices, which is basically just pick and choose all of the above from what I just said. So you don't necessarily have to have not had any prohibited substance on it for 3 years. Like, for example, if the ground you were using was sprayed with Raid at some point and you don't remember how long ago, you're still fine to grow on there. Use natural fertilizers. Maybe you don't want to rotate your crops, whatever the case may be. Organic practices tend to be a little healthier on the environment because there wouldn't be as much runoff from pesticide or insecticide if you're not using it, things like that. But you don't necessarily have to follow this unless you want to be certified organic and to sell certified organic products. Lastly is inorganic practices, which would just be, going against the things said above. So using chemical fertilizers and pesticides, having genetically modified organism plants, which also I want to briefly add in. The fact that the plant is genetically modified isn't usually the problem. It's the fact that they're genetically modified to become resistant to pesticide, which allows farmers to spray even more pesticide on them than they would normally. So it's not necessarily the plant being modified that's the problem. It's the fact that it's being modified to resist pesticide. Sorry for that little side note. Lastly, I want to give you the steps for anyone who's interested and for anyone who wants to know kind of what's going on and how to do it. So firstly, I would say identify a location, either indoor or outdoor. Are you using pots? Are you using containers? Think about how much light you're getting. Think about, is it in the shade? Will there be shade for part of the day? Where is the sun facing? These are all very important questions to ask yourself. Next, I would say locate your USDA Hardiness zone if you're in the United States. Other countries probably have a similar system of the climates of where you can grow things. Again, for the US specifically, there are extension services out of most states' universities. So for example, in Alabama, it would be Auburn's extension office. In Pennsylvania, it's Penn State's extension office, things like that. But there's like an agricultural school in every state. So you can find a lot of helpful information on those extension websites. But yeah, figure out what you can grow in your zone and at what time. Also think about if you're going to direct sow or transplant. Direct sow just means you're putting a seed straight in the ground, and a transplant means you're starting it indoors with a more controlled environment, and then you're going to take the plant outside to, the elements of the sun and heat and rain and snow, whatever it is, depending on what time of the year. Next is your layout. Where do you want your plants? Again, consider the sun. Consider companion planting, which is where you have different crops that kind of complement each other. Maybe one deters a pest away from another plant, or maybe one provides shade to a plant that needs shade. I would look into the Three Sisters, which is like an indigenous way of planting. I believe it's squash, beans, and corn, if I'm not mistaken. Consider intercropping, which is where you put different plants right next to each other, and they can occupy the same space, because some plants have different nutritional needs, which means that they won't be competing for resources. If you plant crops that need the same resources too close together, it's going to cause competition, and one might end up dying, or they both might end up dying. It really depends. Think about anchoring is what I'm going to call it. What does this plant draw in? There are some plants that, attract butterflies or bees or bugs, just whatever, look at what that plant might attract and consider if that's a good thing or a bad thing for you. And then think about the site itself when you're considering your layout. Like I was saying earlier, how much shade is it getting? How much sunlight is it getting? Does it rain really often where you live? All of those types of things. And then lastly is the plants. What type of plants do you want? Do you want marigolds? Do you want sunflowers? Do you want peas, squash, potatoes, beans, whatever it is? And consider how all of the following things above would affect that or impact that. Lastly, I'm going to give you just kind of a list of supplies for anyone who is a complete beginner and has no idea of where to go. Firstly, you might want a pot or a container if you're growing that way. Ensure there's space for drainage. A lot of plants do not like having too much water. It can cause the roots to rot if there's too much water. So just be mindful that there is a place for that water to escape. Think about the soil. If you're growing organic, make sure it's organic soil. If your plant has certain needs, like nitrogen, phosphorus, or potassium, make sure you're keeping those in mind. Then you'll want to get your seeds or your sprouts, again, depending on what you're doing. Trowel, which is like a small shovel, a big shovel, if you're growing straight in the ground, and gloves. I think those are really the only things you would need to start. So if you have any questions, please let me know. This is just like a weird thing I am kind of passionate about now. So yeah, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, please remember to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Any further questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. Any further tips, please leave them in the comments below. I'm excited to hear what you all have to say. Anyway, that's all for this episode. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.